Welcome to our final day of the Chelsea Pants Sew Along. I've had a really great time sewing along with you this week, and I'm delighted that you've decided to join us. So I'm really excited to see everyone's progress photos. Please keep posting those. Today we just have a little bit of work to do. We're just going to be hemming our pants, and that's pretty quick and easy. So I'm going to show you how I do that. Should be pretty brief, and then I'm going to give you a couple of days to catch up over the weekend, and then we're going to have a final deadline for posting our final photos, and then I'm going to choose some prizes early next week. So thank you so much for joining along with me. If you have any questions, please ask, and keep those pants coming. Okay, so the last thing we need to do in order to finish our pants is just to turn up the hem. So this pattern has a 1-inch hem allowance, and I have my seam gauge here to help me figure out what that is on the pants. So I just measure up 1 inch. Sometimes I'll run a basting stitch along at 1 inch to help me figure out where that turned edge is. That's just a long straight stitch without back tacking that I remove later if my fabric doesn't press real well. This is a pont knit from Slyfox, and it presses really well. So I don't need to run a basting stitch. I'm just gonna measure up 1 inch, go over to my iron, and fold it over. And I've already kind of done a pressed hem prior to this. So you're just gonna fold it over 1 inch, making sure that of course that it's at 1 inch all the way around, and then you're going to just sew your hem. Now you want to make sure if you're using something like a stretch woven, like a stretch denim, that you finish these edges first so that they don't fray. A knit isn't going to fray, so if you're not using cover stitch and you're just using a sewing machine, that's just fine on a knit. But if you are using a stretch woven, you want to finish them with something like pinking shears. They have this kind of scalloped edge to the blade, and that would finish the edge, or running a zigzag stitch along the edge would do it as well if you don't have a serger. If you have a serger, you can just kind of serge, don't serge off any fabric, but just serge along the edges and then turn it under and top stitch. You can do 1 or 2 lines of top stitching depending on what your preference is and the how you've done the top stitching on the rest of the pants and how you want that to look. Now before you do turn up the hem, I would recommend, of course, trying on the pants and making sure that 1 inch is where you need to hem them at, that they haven't ended up too long or too short. I always try to take into account what type of shoes I'm going to be wearing. So if I'm going to be wearing heels, which heels am I going to wear, and making sure that the hem I'm using is going to be appropriate for that. So as long as you've done all that, you're going to take it over to your sewing machine, sew on top of the pants to complete your hem, and I've done it already for this side. So this is my hem here, and I've just done 1 single row of top stitching. I do lengthen my stitch length to a 3mm stitch length when I'm doing this top stitching, just because I think that it just looks a little bit more professional. And that's it. You have your pants all finished, and you've done a wonderful job. The only final step that you may need to do is if you've waited to place your back pockets and you've just basted them on. If you waited to put down on your back pockets until now and just have them basted, you're going to want to look in the mirror or take a back shot. I've nicknamed it the Belfie, the back selfie, if you don't have someone to take it for you, just to double check that they're in the right spot before you permanently sew them down, which you would want to do now. I didn't choose pockets on this pair, but I have pockets on several of my others. So that's it. Congratulations. You have a pair of Chelsea pants, and I've had a great time sewing along with you and can't wait to see all of your finished items.